This guy is actually from 500 years ago, and you might have known La Signora. His name is the Bloodstained Knight, the man, the myth, the legend from one of Eula's Bessenslaw artifact sets. There are many items, weapons, and small bits of dialogue that refer to him, so let's compile what we know and walk through how this man went from being an honorable white knight to the Bloodstained Knight. 500 years ago, before the Bloodstained Knight came to be, he was simply a man named Roland. He was a noble-born member of the Knights of Favonius in Mondstadt, serving under Grandmaster Arundolin. Roland was mentored by Arundolin's best friend, Rostam, who you might recognize as La Signora's lover. Rostam trained Roland in chivalry, justice, and swordsmanship. At the start of his story, Roland is described as a bright white knight who rushes toward injustice, beast, and disaster to cut, slash, and pierce. He was quite literally a knight in shining armor, the exact kind of figure the dreamers like us tend to romanticize. And the Maiden's Beloved artifact set even tells a story of a maiden who fell in love with him. It describes a bookish maiden who grows up on romantic stories about damsels in distress getting rescued by knights. Then one day that fantasy comes true for her. She is saved by a knight in shining armor, Roland. Grateful for what he did, she offers him a reward. But Roland turns down everything she gives him except for a single pure white flower. He insists that chivalry is its own reward. After that, the maiden falls in love with him, but never gets a chance to confess her true feelings. Noble expectations and decorum keeps her love for him unspoken. Years pass and she becomes restless. She wanders constantly, like a lost bird, repeatedly praying that her love will reach the knight. She searches, prays, and waits until she grows old. Suitors come and go, and eventually they stop coming. She remains fixed on the same memory, unchanged. But did Roland ever return her affections? Did he like her back at all? We don't know. She likely never got the answer she wanted. She may not have ever gotten to confess at all. And even if she did, I don't know if she would have still loved him after seeing what he eventually became. Because 500 years ago, the cataclysm happened.
We interrupt this lore spiral to bring you news from today's sponsor.
Today's video was sponsored by Arknights Enfield, a 3D real-time strategy RPG that just officially launched on January 22nd. And the official release version, Zeroth Directive, is live now on PS5, PC, and mobile. Arknights Enfield is set on Talos 2, where you play as the Administrator, exploring, defending, and expanding humanity's frontier. And what makes it feel different is how it blends real-time strategic team combat with actual immersive exploration, while also letting you literally transform the world through factory building and regional development. Remember, you're not just fighting to survive, you're building the systems that keep your entire operation alive. The storytelling is fully 3D and cinematic with expressive cutscenes, stylized character performances, and environments that look genuinely gorgeous to move through. At launch, you've got over 20 playable operators, including several 6-star operatives like Levitain, Gilberta, and Yvonne. And each one has their own class, element, and skill kit, so your team comps can feel totally different depending on how you like to play. Combat is real-time with up to 4 operators, and it's all about timing skills, mixing physical statuses, and arts inflictions, and adapting your strategy to bigger threats. And then there's the AIC Factory. You build and expand your automated industry complex, run automated production lines, gather resources, and use the regional development system to power both combat and exploration. You'll also explore dynamic regions like Industrial Valley 4 and Dijiang, and Wuling's traditional meets modern Chinese-inspired designs, each with their own mechanics and discoveries. Plus, the release celebration is stacked. Download now and you can get over 130 free pulls, 6-star operator Ardelia, 6-star weapon Dreams of the Starry Beach, and 2 6-star weapon selection crates through in-game events. Arknights Enfield is a 3D real-time strategy RPG available now on PlayStation 5, PC, and mobile. Use the link in the description and pinned comment down below to play today. Thank you so much, Arknights Enfield, for sponsoring today's video. Conria, a nation that lived without the influence of the gods, was destroyed. Monsters carrying abyssal power poured out from Conria and spread across Teyvat. In response, the Knights of Favonius went on an expedition toward Conria to fight those monsters. The expedition was led by Grandmaster Arundolin, and alongside him was Rostam, Roland's mentor, who would die during that mission. So far, it is not confirmed whether Roland actively participated in the cataclysm itself. However, the lore in Elegy for the End insinuates that he was fighting to defend Mondstadt on the same expedition as Arundolin and Rostam. But this is where Roland's transformation starts. After the cataclysm, Roland and those loyal to him traveled westward. Expedition after expedition, monster after monster, and battle after battle. During one of his expeditions, Roland kills another hero who defended Teyvat during the cataclysm, the Viridescent Venerer. the Queen of Hunters. She lived 500 years ago during the Cataclysm and was among the notable figures who fought against the abyssal monsters that invaded Tevat. But during her continued quest to slay monsters, the Viridescent Venerer succumbed to what seems to be abyssal corruption and became a monster herself. Roland eventually found her and, seeing her as a monster, killed her. Somewhere along the way, Roland begins to lose himself in the act of cutting down his foes. He convinced himself that what he was feeling was satisfaction that justice was being served, and he kept pushing toward the goal of purging the world of evil. People tried to cancel him by saying that slaughter done in the name of justice is still slaughter. But Roland didn't take that advice, and in fact, he continued on his path. As he kept fighting, Roland became increasingly stained by blood from the monsters he killed. Over time, the appearance of his sword, armor, and accessories changed as they became stained black. And even though he emerged victorious from these battles, people he had just saved fled from him in fear, seeing him as another monster. That's when he becomes the Bloodstained Knight. Eventually, Roland came to the realization that there was no place in the world left for him. He went to the fallen kingdom of Conria, intending to die in battle against the monsters there. Instead, he learned a horrifying truth, one that we know all too well. Those monsters were actually the people of Conria, cursed into those forms. He decided that this was the ultimate injustice, and he pledged himself to the abyss. By the end of his story, his path of so-called chivalry had turned him from the white knight he used to be into the monster he had become. But what or who could have pulled Roland over to the abyss in the first place? In the past, we've talked about one particular theory that would be genuinely horrifying if it's true, that the voice of the abyss is Vedrfolnir, one of Conria's 5 sinners, and Dainsleif's older brother. And if Vedrfolnir is involved in the upcoming patch, that could also explain why the Wild Hunt is back, even with Rayrir, another Conrian sinner, out of the picture. For now, I hope. After the Cataclysm, Vedrfolnir took on the form of a suspended purple crystal, able to influence the minds of others. Dainsleif later implied that Vedrfolnir's consciousness could exist across time itself, past, present, and future all at once. According to the weapon lore from Stygian Onslaught, each of the 5 sinners mirrors one of the 4 shades and the heavenly principles. Their powers are twisted reflections of their divine concepts. Life for Rhindaughter and Nibirius, death for Rayrir and Renova, time for Vedrfolnir and Istaroth, space for Sertologi and Asmodee, and reason for Roptatyr and the heavenly principles themselves. If Rayrir represents the blasphemy of death, then Vedrfolnir is almost certainly the blasphemy of time. His powers seem to imitate Istaroth, the god of time. But unlike Istaroth, whose voice could travel through time to guide and protect, Vedrfolnir's version of that power is warped. This means the voices that Rayrir and Vedrfolnir heard could have been Vedrfolnir's future self. It would explain why he smiled creepily when Rayrir mentioned the voice. He figured it out. And I don't mean the abyss is just imitating Vedrfolnir's voice. I mean it could literally be Vedrfolnir himself. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm your leafy lore keeper Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.